You ever build something with your hands, your nights, your breath, and watch the person you love light a match to it? That's my life in a sentence. Now imagine she's the CEO, I'm the co founder, and the match wasn't hers alone. It was fed to her by the brother she trusts. Before we begin, comment down where you are watching from. People ask me all the time how it feels to be fired by the person you married. They expect shock, humiliation, a sad montage. What they don't expect is the way time stretches. How a single phone call can turn 10 years into 10 minutes and make your memory feel like a courtroom exhibit. My name is Thomas. I co founded Arcadia Labs with Clary, my wife, my partner, the woman who used to fall asleep with her laptop on her chest and a grin like she'd just caught the future. We were young and ridiculous and certain. I designed the first prototype in a basement that smelled like instant coffee and stale optimism. Clary pitched to the angel investors in flats we couldn't afford. We called each other at 3 in the morning and celebrated like we'd already won. We built something real, not just a company, a world. We hired our friends, we fed them pizza at midnight, we argued about logos or burnt toast. She had the charisma, I had the stubborn engineering brain. We balanced each other. We were a team on paper and in blood. So when the accusations came, I thought they were a mistake, a smear, an ugly rumor that would be cleaned up with one phone call. But the rumor carried a name, Jonah, Clary's brother. Jonah had always been complicated, charming in short bursts, temperamental in the long ones. He had shown up at our office for drinks, told clients stories that made them laugh, then vanished for weeks. When we offered him a consultative role, unpaid, Clary said it would be good for family. I disagreed quietly. Family and business are different maps. She drew the lines with her heart. It started with an email. An anonymous tip that I had been diverting funds, a misreported invoice, a screenshot cut and pasted from 3 years ago, edited. The board asked for transparency. Clary asked for answers. The first meeting was polite, the second was a funeral. Papers were slid across the table that looked damning in the soft conference light. I watched my life refract through glass. The lies were surgical. They accused me of routing payments to a shell company I had never heard of. They said a vendor who hadn't been paid in months suddenly had new contracts with one of my accounts. They pointed to a string of numbers that, taken on their face, did look like a map of deception. It was convincing because it was precise, artful. Somebody knew exactly how to make evidence feel like truth. I remember Clary's eyes, not just the look of a CEO weighing a partner, but the look of a woman who felt betrayed by her blood. I tried to talk, to explain the ledger, to pull up the actual records. Someone in that room, I later learned it was Jonah, had already arranged the agenda, timed the queries, whispered suggestions about trust. By the time I had my words, the room had already chosen. They fired me in a 5 line memo. No ceremony, no hearing, no chance to defend the story. I left my desk I left my desk with a box. People I'd hired made small, awkward excuses. Clary hugged me in the elevator and said it wasn't personal. Her hug felt like a verdict. For 2 days, I sat in the apartment we bought together and tried to breathe around the idea of being exiled from a place I built. I wanted to scream, to call the press, to make a spectacle. Instead, I did the only thing left that felt like me. I looked for the truth. Evidence, I learned, is patient. Lies are loud. Truth is quiet. I dug through backups, server logs, email headers that most people never open because they trust the humans who tell them stories. I found the timestamps that didn't match, IP addresses pinged from rooms Jonah had access to, and a vendor email that had been spoofed. Little things, a different font, a copied signature image, details that stitched together created a pattern. I also found something worse, a set of messages between Jonah and a junior exec where he coached how to frame the accusation. He even suggested the exact phrase that would stick in board members' minds: breach of fiduciary trust. He wrote, make it sound like theft, but keep it technical. Reading it, I felt two currents: a cold anger and a weird, hollow grief that the person who had lit the match was family. I did the math, not the accounting kind, the human kind. If I went public, Clary would go into defense mode. The company would fracture, employees would choose sides. We had clients who would panic. The damage would be enormous, and ultimately, it might still cost me my reputation, it might still cost me my reputation, but if I did nothing, I would let a lie stand on the pillars we built together. So I planned, quietly, clinically. I compiled a dossier, server logs printed and bound, timestamps highlighted, vendor confirmations, the spoofed email headers, screenshots of Jonah's messages. I called two trusted former colleagues and asked them to review the data. They looked at the timeline and said what I needed. It was exculpatory. It proved manipulation. It would also hurt people I loved. Then I did something that surprised even me. I put the papers in a manila envelope, wrote Clary's name on it, and left it on the kitchen table. It felt almost too cinematic, like a gesture from a movie, but I wanted her to have the truth before I spoke it. I wanted her to see the pattern without my voice in the room. She came home late. The apartment was quiet except for the kettle. Clary paused when she saw the envelope. Her fingers trembled as she opened it and scanned, faster than a layperson should be able to catch technical proofs. There was a moment where the world contracted. The kettle's whistle, a car passing outside, the thrum of the city, and the woman who had been the center of my life looked at me as if deciding whether she recognized me at all. What is this? She asked. The truth, I said. We talked for hours, not the yelling, messy kind of conversation you see on television. That was surgical. I pointed to a timestamp, then another. I showed her an IP trace, the vendor's confirmation email. Her face changed in stages: confusion, disbelief, then the slow unwinding of a person who is watching a story she believes collapse. She called Jonah. I listened. You can hear a phone call that will change everything and not know the moment it becomes historic. Jonah's voice was steady, then defensive, then small. I heard talk of, I meant to protect the family, and it got out of hand. Clary's voice threadbare. I watched her hold the phone and fold in on herself, the corporate armor she wore like an additional skin starting to peel. By the time she hung up, it was 4 in the morning. She sat down across from me and we stared at each other. Two people who had built something and watched it erode from within. I could see in her eyes the cost, not just to her or to me, but to the company and the people who trusted us. You should go to the board, I said. She shook her head. If I go, Jonah will blame me, and I'll have to either choose him or the company. I can't undo what I did by firing you. Her hands covered her face, and for a moment I felt like I was looking at a stranger with my wife's skin. That night we held each other and did not cry. Sometimes silence is the loudest truth. Days passed. Clary tried to fix it. She called legal counsel, spoke to the board, and started the painful work of untangling her brother's fabrications. She apologized publicly to me, a press release that read like a confession. She reinstated me in a title and tried to rebuild trust. People applauded the forgiveness, they call it leadership. But some things don't come back. A foundation cracked does not simply rejoin because you pour concrete over the fissure. The line between personal and professional had shifted. Family had inserted itself like a wedge, and the wedge had splintered us. I sat across from Clary in the same kitchen where I'd left the envelope and realized the deeper fracture. This wasn't just about a smear campaign, it was about loyalty. She had chosen her blood, then her company, then me, in a sequence that exposed what mattered to her the most. It was painful to admit, but it was true. So I did something that felt both cowardly and necessary. I walked back into the office and resigned, not because I wanted to hurt Clary, if anything, because I wanted to stop the cycle of damage, but because living in the shadow of what happened would make me somehow someone I no longer recognized. And then days later, I walked over to our house, held an envelope, not the proof this time, but something sharper, a stack of papers that would end more than a roll. Divorce papers. I did not hand them to her in anger. I handed them to her with the calmness of someone closing a ledger. We had loved and built and failed, and some covenants, some covenants once broken cannot be repaired by apologies. Her eyes filled not with rage, but with a quiet, stunned grief. She said, "Thomas, we can fix this." I said, "Maybe we can fix the company, maybe we can fix our roles. I don't think we can fix how we chose in a moment when the house burned." She reached for my hand and I withdrew it because the parting needed to be clean. This story isn't a victory lap, it isn't a melodramatic downfall. It's a record of choices by Jonah, by Clary, and by me. I learned that truth is messy and often requires patience, that love and loyalty are not synonyms, that protecting a family can look an awful lot like protecting a narrative. I lost a marriage and almost lost my name. Saved my integrity but paid a price for it. If there's a moral, it's this: build your life with people who will be honest with you when it matters. And choose structures in business that prevent family ties from becoming legal weapons. Also, and this is small but real, keep meticulous backups. People sometimes ask whether I regret handing the divorce papers. Regret is an ordinary thing. I regret the fights that could have been had earlier, the silence that allowed a lie to grow. But I do not regret choosing to live in a world where my name means what it means. I do not regret making space for honesty. You'll probably ask if Clary and I ever spoke again. We did, a handful of times. There were funerals and contract negotiations, and a final meeting where we signed away equity and wished each other well. It was an odd sort of closure, bureaucratic and human at once. I tell you this now because I think there are people watching who are tied into the same knotted web of family and business, and they need to know that leaving isn't always cowardly. Sometimes it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. If you were here, if you stayed, tell me where you are watching from. Share it below. I want to know who sat with me through this. And if you liked the video, make sure to subscribe the channel.